Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of making your About Me page. If you remember from last class, we did some setup with wondering what JavaScript could do for our document. So we're going to go back to that in a little bit later. I'm actually going to set that to be the background of this div and kind of do some experimental stuff with it. But the last thing I have to put content-wise on my page is my social media icons in my footer. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to use the footer tag. So footer, then it'll automatically close. And then I'm going to have definitely my Instagram, my GitHub, still figuring out what else it is that I want to link to. But so for now, I'm going to build an unordered list, and I'm going to nest inside of that. So I'll do my LIs, and then inside of my line items, I'm going to do a link. So I'll do an A href equals. And just like when we built our nav bar, I'm just going to leave these blank for right now. And then and my A tag. I'm also going to put a paragraph tag in here because you might want to input information of how many followers on those certain things that you have. Okay, so I want to do this 3 times. So I'm just going to do a command copy and then paste in 3 items. So you can head on over to a site like Font Awesome and get the social media icons that you want to use. So I just went to Font Awesome, typed in Instagram. Down here on the right is this drop down menu for download SVG. It's underneath the Creative Commons license, which should be fine for your portfolio site for use. And then you can agree and download, and it's going to download your SVG. So go ahead and for now, do that for 3 of the social media accounts that you want to share. So for me, I'm going to do Instagram, GitHub, and LinkedIn. I say go with your intuition for this one because each thing that you typed in, say for example LinkedIn, is going to give you different options. Do you want it cropped in a box? Do you want it without the box? So I would say really like work on your high fidelity mockups for this one. You might want consistency, or who's to say maybe 2 of them are cropped in a box and one is featured on its own because maybe you want to drive more traffic to that specific one. So kind of use your discretion of which SVGs you download for your social media icons. So if you go to your downloads folder, the topmost 3 recent downloads should be whatever 3 icons you downloaded. So you can click at the top one, hold down Shift, and go down to select all 3. And then luckily my About Me repository is right on my desktop, so I can just click, bring these in. And then for my organization in my file, it makes the most sense if I drop these in my assets folder. So I really like to have an assets folder for all my links. I could even go in here a step further, most likely, and maybe organize a file for just my SVGs. It depends, right? Everyone's file organization system here is going to be a little bit different. But for now, at least they're there. And now I know that I have access to that code to bring those SVGs into my social media footer. So now when I go back over to my VS Code, in my assets folder, I can drop down these menus, and I should be able to see the code for my GitHub, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It should all come in here. So it's not ideal. I prefer when SVGs open as more multiple lines versus like one huge line, but let's see how this is to work with. So I'm going to go in here first to put my Instagram, because that's probably what I'm most active on. And I'm going to do a Command C, and then I'm going to come back to my index.html, and I want to paste this in here. So I've pasted it in my SVG. So unfortunately it is in one big long line, but I think it's going to be okay for what we're doing. So in here, you know, some people might write in like how many followers they have, something like that, but I thought it would be a nicer touch for my About Me page to make it a little bit more personal and instead talk about like what I use that platform for. So for me, a lot of Instagram is my process. So I'm going to try out what it looks like, maybe try styling this, and you know, later I can always decide to get rid of this paragraph if I want, but I at least want to just try something different. Next, I'm going to go in and get my other two logos. So I'm going to place in LinkedIn and GitHub. I'm also going to add in a few comments here for myself just to make this code easier to maintain and update. So I'm just going to let myself know that Instagram is right there. Command / will comment that out. And then I'm going to put in that my GitHub. So again, Command / and then I'm going to write in and Command /. So this will just help me as I paste my SVGs in, especially because these are all in one line, how they're coming in from that site. This just will make it, so be thinking about your future self always with code, right? So you want to set yourself up for success. So this is easy for me to come back and edit. Like all this stuff that's kind of in here, it doesn't matter to me so much, but this is the meat of what I need access to. I need access to the text that's inside of the paragraph. I need access to where I'm going to point it to later. And I also need access to the class that I'm giving it, right? Because I want to do some hover techniques and some effects and some things that really make my website feel current. And I think this will give me access to everything that I need. So go ahead and paste in the other two links the same way. So here's where you want to start thinking like a copy editor. It's really nice how my Instagram is just called process. I really like how my GitHub is just called code. But LinkedIn is weird, right? It breaks the structure. I want this to be like a max, like 8 characters if possible, but professional development is the only way I can think to call that out. So this might be an example in this class of our first to do. So the way you do this is to do, and then you can write figure out shorter name, and then Command /. So this is a fast way for you to keep track actually in your code of what you still need to do. I also suggest making a to-do list, right? And putting this somewhere else too so that you remember. This is where user testing really comes in too. Like talk to your friends, like talk to people that might use your portfolio site, say that challenge to them, be like, you know, LinkedIn is too long, professional development, like what else could I call that? And someone might come up with an idea that you maybe never would have thought of on your own, but is like the perfect solution of what you're looking for. So you see these in code from time to time, these to-do list, but again, always make sure you put it on your own to-do list so you don't forget it later. All right, so it looks like we have finished our footer section. So let's head over to VS Code and see what this looks like. So far I've got my favicon at the top, my nav bar, it's got an underline for hover, still need to fix some styling there, a photo of myself, my about me statement, some starter code from JavaScript that we'll use later in a little bit, and then I'm seeing my icons appear. And I can tell that they're links because when I hover over them, I get that Mickey Mouse hand, so that's great, they're actually links. And for now, they're just being styled blue, but we're not going to worry too much about that. There's one last thing that we have to do in our HTML before we're ready to head over to CSS and build our mobile grid. So the one thing that I forgot to do was to put a div around everything. So if you remember, if we're trying to move individual elements, that becomes really tricky. But if we just have one container div that wraps everything on our page, then that's a lot easier to move elements around. So the last thing I'm going to do in my HTML before I head over to CSS is I'm just going to build a div with the class equals, and then I'm going to call this container, and then I get a closing div. So I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom in my body, and I'm going to paste in my div. So if you remember, code can get unruly really quickly. So the last bit of time I'm going to take for this code along is going to be to properly indent my code. So you might find yourselves in situations like this that you know you have all the content you need, right? Because you can see it in Live Server. You can tell that what you need is there, but it's just like, what is this mess that I even made? How is this even organized? So let's take a little bit of time and properly indent this code. So one helpful tool in VS Code is holding down on a Mac the Option key, and that allows you to indent multiple lines at the same time. So you can see I can tell that I have this parent element, div class equals container, and this closing div should line up with that. So now I know that here is my parent, line 16 is my parent, div class equals container. And then line 17, I've done one return with my tab key, and here I get my div class equals icon, and then my SVG opening tag, my closing SVG opening tag are in line. And then I have my opening div container and my ending div container lining up. So the way that you can tell that is through these gray lines in the document. So let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see. VS Code will draw these lines for you so that you can very clearly see what is a parent element, what is a child element. So you can see this nav bar I need to indent again, right? Because this nav is on the same level as my icon div. So now what I should see, line 44, I want to tab in that UL, tab in that UL, and then you might say, but like, I don't want to hit tab a million times today, right? Like all these LIs need to get indented the same amount. So that's where the holding down of option comes into play. So when you hold down option on a Mac, and again, I'm sorry, I don't have a PC to know what the command is off the top of my head, but you can pause this video and look it up. By holding down the option key, it allows me to click all those LIs at the same time and then hit tab one time and it will indent all of them. So this is a really helpful tip to remember because you might have like a whole section of your code that's properly indented, but it's not nested within the parent div. So that allows you to kind of move elements over at the same time. So I'm going to take a little while and properly indent my code. Let me give maybe a couple more examples just to make sure that you have a pattern established, and then we'll continue on. So if I hit tab now, see how this opening nav tag on line 43 drops down, aligns with that closing nav tag on 50. And now this next opening div is a child of that same div class equals container. So I'm going to want to hit tab, move that over. And then this image is a child, so I'm going to hit tab. So again, it should always be like opening tag, closing tag, opening tag, closing tag, and then nested inside of them all of the children. So this is going to look a little bit different for everyone. I tell people too, like sometimes if this is easier to see, you can add a comment between every single one. So you can say like, where my about me statement starts, right? Right above portrait, I could do picture of myself. So code doesn't always give us the chance to speak like a human, right? Like we're forced to use this like specific language of div class equals portrait, image source equals da 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 da, which, you know, it might not mean anything to you, especially if you come back to this like a couple days from being away from it. You might just be like, where did I start? Where did I end? So this kind of commenting and like careful marking of code just kind of helps you jump back into it and make more sense of things. So take a little bit of time and properly indent your code. So you might find yourself in a situation like I just found myself, where I just spent, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes or so indenting my code, kind of making it all nest the way that I thought was appropriate. But then I got down to this bottom part and was like, wait, okay, so footer goes inside this, but wait, that doesn't go inside that, and HTML. And then I scrolled back up to my top and realized my HTML opens in my head. That should be indented. So I was like, all right, I've already spent 5-10 minutes like understanding the logic, giving myself some comments, like this is where the image changes, this is where my about me statement is. But now I'm just like over it, right? I don't want to spend more time fixing this. So there are a couple extensions. This is going to be our second extension that we've used in the class. So far we've only used Live Server, but there's another one called Prettier. So if you head on over to your extensions, click on Prettier, you can download this and enable it onto your plugin. And then this is how you are going to work from then on out. So you have the Prettier extension installed. Now we're going to use it to leverage to format our code. So the first command that we're going to do, again, after our Prettier extension is installed, is we're going to head back to our index.html. And then we are going to do on a Mac, we are going to do Command-Shift-P. And then this window opens up. In it, we can type format document. So that's the first one that is coming up. And then we can click Prettier. So let me undo that again and do Shift Command P. You can type in format document. And then what it should do, you should be able to pick the Prettier. I think it's because I've already done it once. So this is an editor that just goes in and it knows that HTML should end with an HTML at the end. and it should pretty up your code. It looks like it did some funky things to me here with my SVG. So let me pause for a second and take a look at that. So I think try the prettier extension. Another one that you can also try is called Beautify. That's another really popular one. For me personally, it actually made my code a little bit more glitchy because it kind of did some weird stuff with the SVG that I'm not so wild about. But I want everyone to just try these and see if you can get it up and running. Again, this is good expertise and just like typing around on Google, seeing what you can come up with, seeing if you can get your code properly indented in faster ways. I'm going to pause for this code along for the week because I promised myself I would make these videos around 20 minutes. I know that's a lot of content to take in. But in our next session, we're going to head on over to our CSS because the nice thing now is that I have everything set in my HTML. I have a really solid foundation. I have things properly named with tags, and the next part of this video is going to be moving over to my CSS.